Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into a viral and honestly, brutally honest confession from a student who used AI to cheat. And more importantly, we're unpacking exactly what happened to them next. We're going to break down their timeline, how they actually got caught, and the very real-world fallout of taking a desperate shortcut. We're actually skipping our usual agenda today just to drop right into the heavy stakes of our source material. Because the original creator makes it abundantly clear right off the bat, this is absolutely not a celebratory how-to guide for hacking the system. Nope, it is a confession. It's a completely transparent look at what happens when you submit AI-written work and that very specific creeping dread that follows you right after you hit submit. Section 1, Anatomy of a Bad Decision, for Pressure Cooker. Let's get into it. You know, bad decisions rarely happen in a vacuum, right? They usually happen when we feel backed into a corner. Just look at this perfect storm of overwhelm the student was dealing with. It's week 9 of the semester, they're falling behind because they've been sick, they're trying to balance shifts at a part-time job, and suddenly they are staring down 3 major assignments due in just 4 days. A biology lab, an economics essay, and a history analysis all just colliding at once. Under that kind of intense time pressure, well, a terrible shortcut suddenly feels like a perfectly reasonable lifeline. Moving on to Section 2, the illusion of perfection. This covers attempt number 1, the history essay. So, desperate to just survive the week, our student used ChatGPT to generate a 1,000-word history essay. It took them 45 seconds. They changed a few words, slapped their name on it, and turned the whole shebang in under 10 minutes. But here's the kicker. Structural perfection was exactly the problem. The essay completely lacked their natural, unique voice. And even more dangerously, the AI literally hallucinated a citation for a historian they had never even read in class, while utterly ignoring the mandatory course reading list. They had essentially just put their name on a flawlessly grammatical piece of pure fiction. Which brings us to Section 3, the smoking gun. This was attempt number 2, the take-home quiz. 3 weeks roll by. The student, kind of emboldened by the complete silence from their history professor, tries the shortcut again, this time on an economics quiz. They figured, well, the answers are just factual, so it couldn't hurt, right? But this second attempt created the exact trap that caught them. See, they wrote 6 answers themselves and used AI for the remaining 4. Imagine being the grader in this situation. You have a student's natural, slightly imprecise voice sitting directly next to highly formal, textbook-precise AI generation. The inconsistency literally screams off the page. The student couldn't see the pattern because they were rushing, but to an outside observer, painfully obvious. Now let's look at Section 4, how detection actually works, the human element.
So that blatant inconsistency we just talked about, it led to the dreaded email. A very simple, terrifying request from the professor to discuss recent submissions. This triggered 48 agonizing hours of pure anxiety, sleeplessness, and dread for the student. And it really highlights a crucial takeaway about AI detection. It almost always starts with a human educator, not some robot running a scan. Think about it. The professor had read the student's work for 9 straight weeks. She knew their quirks, their characteristic imprecisions. The software detector was just a secondary confirmation. The real detector was human intuition, simply noticing that a student's voice had vanished.
During those deeply, deeply uncomfortable office hours, the professor didn't even accuse them immediately. Instead, she just asked the student to explain the argument in their own history essay. And humiliatingly, they couldn't do it. The student noted that the professor was professional, direct, and just genuinely disappointed, which honestly is way worse than anger. Being totally unable to explain the sources in an essay, bearing your own name, is a uniquely devastating reality check. The gig was officially up. Section 5, the real consequences. Let's break down exactly what happens after you're caught. Cornered by their total inability to speak to their own work, the student confessed. Now, we hear vague warnings about academic consequences all the time, right? But this fallout was swift and it was brutal. A permanent 0 on the history essay. Severe point deductions on the quiz. They had to sit through a mandatory 3-hour integrity workshop just to get their final grades released, plus a mark on their internal file, meaning a second offense could lead to outright suspension. But you know what the most painful consequence was? It wasn't academic. It was completely losing the trust of a respected professor that they desperately needed a reference from. You just can't fix that with a makeup assignment.
Section 6, 3 better alternatives, because we really need to talk about what to do when you panic.
Looking back on it all, the shortcut felt like the only way to survive the blind panic of a deadline. But there are always always better options. If you ever find yourself in this kind of pressure cooker, these are your lifelines. Number 1, proactively ask for an extension. The student later found out a quick 30-second email before the deadline could have literally saved their entire semester. Number 2, just submit your own imperfect work. A 55 on a messy, rushed essay beats a 0 on a discovered, plagiarized one every single time. And finally, number 3, if you are going to use AI, use it strictly to build your outline, to brainstorm, but write the actual words yourself. Keep your voice yours. Which really leaves us with this final, provocative thought to chew on. When the pressure mounts and the clock is ticking, is a fleeting 10 minutes of relief from an AI shortcut truly worth the immense anxiety and the lasting consequences that follow? That shortcut has a trapdoor you simply cannot see until you've already fallen through it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep this story in mind the next time you're staring down a deadline, and I will see you next time as we continue to break down the complex world around us.